This is Josh Peak. Welcome to the Josh Peak Show. We have a podcast every single week, and today is going to be a fun one. I think there's a lot of people that are wanting to get to know and understand NFTs, the cryptocurrency space, and so I brought on a special guest, Paul Caldwell. Hey, Paul, how are you doing today?
Good, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, I met you first in Las Vegas.
I remember that. I remember.
That was a good time, and learned a lot. That was my first introduction really to the blockchain, starting to understand it. And
I see. Yeah.
I got really excited when you were talking about it. But Paul is chairman and CEO of Caldwell Soames, and we're going to talk a little bit about NFTs, as well as he's got some special projects that I've started to understand a little bit. But well, let's talk about OG2D. Let's talk about that first. Can you kind of explain what that is and
Sure.
Kind of where it's going?
Sure. OG2D is OG2D.com is an NFT marketplace.
Yep.
In the most traditional sense of it, NFT, that kind of comes off the tongue real easy, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's easy to say. It's like NFT, right? It comes off the tongue real easy. But really, if you think about what a non-fungible token is,
yes,
and then you start to understand it from a business point of view, it gets to be very interesting. So our firm here is, we're a private equity group. We have a publicly traded enterprise fund and a privately held companies fund, and Original Digital Corporation, which owns this, which has in its portfolio or in its programs the OG2D platform marketplace. And so I've come to, over the last couple of years, really understand these non-fungible tokens and what they're all about, really. And it kind of started out, and they still are today, more of a where you can buy and sell and trade. So it's a collectibles thing. The big part of it is collectibles.
Mm-hmm.
But there are more and more of a movement towards really towards monetizing other parts of businesses and more professionalizing it beyond just collectibles. And then even in the collectible space, I don't want to belittle collectibles in any way. Even in the collectible space, it's getting more and more professionalized, and NFTs are becoming more and more integral beyond just NFT marketplaces like OG2D, becoming more integral in things like games, gaming and online games, where components of the games, the gun or the island or the clothing that a particular player is wearing can be an NFT, and that makes it transportable. So what if you could think about what if you could have a pair of sneakers, let's say, that you got in one game, that you purchased in one game, and let's say it's an NFT. What if you could take those pair of sneakers and now, through an authentication process, you could now wear the same sneakers in another game, not even built by the same game developer, because there's a standardization around authentication of non-fungible tokens, regardless of which blockchain they're minted on. So there's a lot of that going on in the space right now. That's what I mean by it's becoming more mature. It's becoming more consolidated in its value proposition. It's been fragmented like crazy. It's not really been organized or consolidated. Now you're really starting to see value organizing and value consolidating to really drive business value, create real value. OG2D's big time tied into that. So its business model is based on OG means original to the number 2, original to digital, OG2D.
Yeah. So
there's an authentication process. There's a lot that goes on in that marketplace that maybe doesn't go on in others. And it uses Algorand. We have a partnership with Algorand, and it uses the Algorand blockchain to mint these NFTs, because Algorand blockchain has some unique aspects to it, in that it allows for larger file sizes to still be on-chain, and it allows for integration with off-chain file storage very seamlessly without losing any security or any of that. And it also allows for fungible attributes to be built into non-fungible tokens. So you can do some really creative things, especially in entertainment space. And OG2D is doing that through their series drop model, where they'll drop a series 6 weeks, once a week for 6 weeks, creates a series. End of 6 weeks, you collect all of them. You can stitch that together and have a 30-minute audiobook or ebook or cartoon or whatever, that sort of thing.
So for someone who's just getting started, they're wanting to invest in these NFTs. I mean, what we're seeing now, obviously, is you'll see these weird looking photos or drawings, like I said, of apes and of these other, and they're going for a ton of money, and people don't think understands what's driving that, and so, and you see on Facebook I am seeing anyway, I'm seeing more and more people that they were internet marketers. Now they're coming in the NFT space, and it's almost like, well, look at me, I'm in the NFT space and you're not yet, type of mentality.
Yeah.
But they have a hard time educating people on Facebook or social media outlets about really what's going on. Almost trying to keep it a little secret, if you would. Maybe what they're trying to do is create value for their membership or whatever they're doing. So how do you break it down to just some person who works? He's a landscaper, but he wants to get involved with NFTs. How would you? I mean, I guess probably the OG2D website would probably explain it, or because I've seen your website, there are videos there. But how would you bring some newbie and say, this is really what it is? This is what it's going to be. This is what it's going to look like in the future.
First of all, Josh, that's a great question. I would encourage the landscaper to, I think it's a buyer beware environment, right? I mean,
sure.
Everything is. I really discourage people from doing anything, making any investments, or doing anything that involves their money in any way. I discourage them from doing it until they understand why they'd even want to. What's the point of it? If you're just going to get caught up in the buzz and throw some money at some NFTs, okay. If you just want to be able to say, I have NFTs, and you have them, I have them, and it's that kind of thing. Okay. But I certainly don't and would never recommend that. If someone's really interested though, in these for collectible purposes, we're wondering why the heck they see something on an email or a news post or a press release that this NFT of this green-haired dragon, spewing fire, just sold out in 30 minutes for $60 million. What is that all about? People's mentality starts to become, well, how do I get my little piece of that $60 million? How do I get that? How do I participate? And I think that's what we see a lot of right now. And that's why I said it's just fragmented. It's been all over the place. The reason we've invested in the space in our portfolio is because we want to be part of that consolidation, that professionalization, that organization. And we really, our teams over the ODC teams, those guys, they understand this stuff. Those folks understand it so well. I said those guys, I should have said those folks, because a couple of gals in there, I want to be politically correct. But at the end of the day, really brilliant folks over there, and they get that, right? So what I would tell the landscaper is, listen, if you're into collectibles and you really have some things that you love, and maybe you collect anyway. If you collect baseball cards, maybe it's kind of like that. If you collect Pokemon cards, it's kind of like that in a digital environment. So someone creates something. So there's number one, there's a creator. That creates a piece of content. Then there's the context that the content resides in. That context in the NFT world happens to be a token. The content resides inside, it's part of this token. And then what happens is that rests in an NFT marketplace, or as I mentioned earlier, that rests in a video game, wherever. And it has a value to it. But the key to it is, when the collectible side, it's about scarcity, it's about authenticity. If it's scarce and there's only one, or there's only 10, or there's only 100, how do you get yours? And then what's the value of that going forward? Because there's secondary markets. So On the one hand, you have speculators. You have a lot of people that have made a tremendous amount of cryptocurrency, like Ethereum, for example, and most NFT marketplaces are minted on Ethereum or an Ethereum fork, these kinds of things. OG2D went a different direction because we don't want to be limited. We don't, and they don't want to be limited. We don't want them to be limited. Algorand offered a much better solution to where the commerce layer, you could still buy an NFT in OG2D that's minted in Algorand, and you can still pay for it with Ethereum. You can still pay for it with your credit card. You don't even need to be in cryptocurrency. You know, I mean, less than 15% of the population in the United States ever even has cryptocurrency or ever is considered cryptocurrency. But what if they still wanted to buy NFT? Well, if they can't because they don't have the crypto, then they're out of the game.
Yep.
So you'll notice at OG2D, you can still use your credit card. You can use your cryptocurrencies at the commerce layer and still enjoy that collectible, that Algorand minted collectible. You still have a wallet that's built to hold that collectible, and it's transferable.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting way they've deployed the technology over there, I think, at ODC through the OG2D marketplace. But so you have these speculators that have all this profit in these cryptocurrencies. They bought Ethereum at $80.
Yep.
And now it's, or they bought Bitcoin at 400 or 1,000 or something, and here you go. And all of a sudden, although Bitcoin's not typically used in the NFT space because you don't mint in it, but OG2D decided that they should separate the commerce layer from everything else, and so that's how we can use Algorand blockchain to mint and get extremely efficient, super fast speeds, low cost in fees, low gas fees, some 100 times less than, for example, Ethereum. But at the same time, have the value proposition for the customer. So it's a market-oriented thing. So on the one hand, you have these speculators that'll just go use their profits on Ethereum and drive the prices of these NFTs way up and the value way up, and they'll sell 100 out for $1,000 each in 15 seconds.
Yep.
And that's the exciting story. So you have the speculators. Then you have the revenue, the people that are looking for revenue opportunities, and what they'll do is they'll go get an NFT that they think's really going to catch fire, and they'll go pay $20 for it. And they'll get it, and they'll put it up into one of the secondary marketplaces, and they'll mark it for sale. And you see a lot of that happening, and that's been going on for a long time. It's not, well, long in relative terms in this digital world we live in today, Josh.
Yeah.
Maybe what, a year, 18 months. But at the same time, I think those people, they look at it as a revenue generator because they'll buy it for $20. They'll put it in the secondary market, and if it's created a value there for $200, they'll put it up there and they'll sell it in secondary market, and they create revenue. They create income that way.
Yeah.
They look at it as they can create a cryptocurrency-based income stream that way through buying and selling NFTs in secondary markets. So you basically
buying and flipping in a sense, right?
Yeah, it's exactly, that's it. Exactly. Yep. It's like flipping it. But they can do it again and again because there's so many NFTs out there. If they pick the right ones, they can go buy for $200. They could buy 10, and they could list them all up for sale in a secondary market, and sell some of them today, maybe some next week. Who knows? But these people typically have a lot of things up there for sale at any particular time in these secondary NFT marketplaces.
Sure.
So
that's a good explanation. I really, I like that. Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about what do you see the futures like of NFTs? Where do you see it going? I mean, obviously what I like about what you guys are doing is you're professionalizing it, like you said. You're making it more, you're consolidating it and making it more of a, not as fragmented probably. So where do you see the future of NFTs going?
I see the value of the non-fungible token being used in a number of, I think, really important ways. I think they have an impact. They can have a social impact. I believe that they can have a meaningful social impact. OG2D is working with a couple of cities, large U.S. cities, who years ago spent a lot of money on sculptures and all of this to create art parks and sculpture gardens, that kind of thing. And that has to go into their city budget, for example, to keep it up, right? Some have to pay someone to keep the little pond clean, the sculpture garden, the art park, and sweep the ground and throw away the trash, keep the seat, the benches painted, all that stuff. But there's an upkeep cost. But what if they created, and with OG2D, what they're doing is they're creating digital 3D scans of these sculptures, creating NFTs, and then OG2D will list these NFTs as unique, one-of-a-kind originals, and then there will be digital equivalents of like when an artist makes a painting, they'll make a painting and then they'll make 100 prints, and you'll see 1 of 100 or 20 of 100, that sort of thing. And they'll do that, and then they'll take the revenue that's generated from those NFT sales and do a rev share with the city, so the city can use that money to defray some of the costs associated with keeping that art park or that sculpture garden clean and current. And so it really has an impact socially that way, because then it gets a nice clean art park and sculpture garden, and it had an effect for that city and the people. So there's this social dynamic that comes into play. With Algorand, in that regard, you also have the fact that it's zero carbon neutral. So we work really hard to make sure that it's a zero or a negative carbon situation over at OG2D. There's an importance there. I've never been really big on, I'm not the guy that's going to run out the door in the morning and go hug a tree before I get in the car. However, I will tell you that there are some serious impacts, some positive impact that you can have as a company when you start just thinking a little bit that way around sustainability. So that's important. And then there's the other side of the business, which is the professional side of the business. You could see companies not NFTing their company, but they could NFT their cash flow. Not unlike STOs. There are a lot of STO listings now that are backed up, going into SPACs and everything else these days. I mean, it's for the financial markets. Security token offerings are going to grow. They've typically been the laggard, right? I mean, if you compare the STO, which is this, that's like the SEC approved security token offering. So like a true IPO, but in the crypto space, let's say, or in the digital space. If you compare that to the DEX, the distributed exchange offerings, which are the modern day equivalent of the ICO, right? From days of old. And there was so much scam and so many people taken advantage of, and they lost money, and it just terrible kind of things happened. And in that DEX space, sometimes I think probably still does, but I see it getting organized. I see more regulation coming in. I don't think that's a negative thing. I think that's a positive thing when it comes to offering people things that require them to use their money. It's certainly good to have a degree of regulatory compliance in there that someone has to adhere to. Otherwise, geez, zooks, you could have somebody listing a token, from the penitentiary or something through a buddy, and pretty soon you got people actually buying this stuff.
True.
And all kinds of scams that can get bolted onto those things. So I think the professionalization, the consolidation, organization, and then regulation will find its way in. And I see then the final thing I would say, Josh, is the corporate use of NFTs. Non-fungible tokens in the legal departments of firms for intellectual property.
Interesting.
Use for NFTs, when you could NFT a patent, but you could have smart contracts associated with that to be able to do really interesting things in the way you could license then portions of a patent instead of a whole patent. So large companies are looking at that, and then the insurance industry with using NFTs with art pieces that they can then put Internet of Things, IoT devices on a painting, for example, and that IoT device on the back of that painting, that NFC chip or whatever, can report that painting's environment. So it becomes like a verb instead of a noun, the painting. And what we're doing, the OG2D team is doing, is they have this authenticity protocol that they use, where they put an NFC chip on a painting, they'll NFT it, and then, but that IoT device will report humidity, will report temperature, where that paint. So if that painting is part of your insurance, it's part of what you schedule on your homeowner's insurance, let's say.
Yeah.
If that painting gets in a really bad environment, all of a sudden the system is reporting that, and all of a sudden an alert goes up, and the insurance company gets a notification, and maybe the homeowner gets a notification that, hey, we need to turn the air conditioning down because you're going to melt the paint. That's an extreme example, right?
Yeah.
But one of the main reasons that for art to be lost, and one of the main reasons for insurance companies to have huge payouts, is water damage in museums and things like that. So there's a whole professional business aspects to NFTs that hasn't really found its way into the mainstream at all, but it's all around the edges right now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's being consolidated, and so I'm very enthusiastic that we're in so early on the technology, but early enough to be able to create the next version of how it's used. That's really what has me keenly interested. I mean, we're considered value investors, right?
Yeah.
And here we are in the NFT space with an NFT marketplace, and other things like OG Pay, which is in that same ODC inside the same Original Digital Corporation. That portfolio.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about next, was the OG Pay. But before I do that, you said something that was really interesting. The SPACs. So that's SPAC, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, and I just started to educate myself a little bit in that area. You see Donald Trump, right, who just, I guess, started his own social media or social company, somehow tied to a SPAC. And now I think it was last night, Black Rifle Company is now talking about going that way too. What is a SPAC? I mean, explain that just a little bit. We don't have to go too long, but
it's think of it as a special purpose type of a company, of an entity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you have this SPACing, SPACing that goes on. Anyway, it's a way to create a special purpose entity and to raise money through the public currency, mm-hmm. Public markets. And you can SPAC, and you can list into NASDAQ, and you can do these various things. And it's a way to create liquidity. Now, historically, in my mind, I couldn't believe last year, and really starting in 2019, how SPACs, I mean, because our firm has been, we've been value investors since 1992. SPACs have always been bad news. It was a bad word in my world, because people would reverse list. They get a shelf company and they do a reverse into the markets, and then you'd have this small company that would be a OTC company, and selling for 1 cent per share. I mean, and then they would try to really grow it, and then they'd get it to 30 cents per share, and that's a huge difference on
huge
hundreds of millions of shares, right? I just always stayed away from that because I didn't understand that game really, mm-hmm. and I never wanted to be part of the sweatshop crowd selling, banging the phones every day, selling Mary Smith 100 shares of something and taking her retirement money. I just never felt clean about it. I never felt good about that. Yep. So we stayed way far away from that in our firm. Now, with Reg A and then Reg A Plus that came in, and then there's all these new variants of different regulations that you can use for listing purposes. Mm-hmm. SPACs have become, since like 2019, extremely attractive now. Yeah. And you just see major legit firms SPACing, and there's this process called de-SPACing, and that's how you then are going to get to your liquidity path. Maybe that's NASDAQ or whatever, and then so it's a means to an end to liquidity, basically. Okay.
Yep. That's what I was. When Trump released this social media platform, or he is starting it, and he tied to a SPAC, and just kind of, I think the way you said, I think that's almost what they would say that was going on. which is probably he's making good moves right now. But so the other thing is the OG pay. That's what's interesting to me. I've talked to Daryl obviously about that, and that may be a game changer in a little bit. So explain to my crowd, the people listening, what is OG pay, and what can you do with it? I mean, because I know there's a lot of people going, well, how do I pay like for a meal, or how do I pay for whatever that I wanted to pay using my crypto? Because that's always been the thing that, it's hard to go buy something. With crypto, it's hard to buy a meal or just whatever, clothes with crypto. Right. So with OG Pay, kind of explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So I wanted to stay away. Also, we want to be invested in technology. So in our space back in 2016, it was fintech and it was decentralized finance. And how do we get into that space? And how do we find sort of a platform investment we can use to develop on, or these kinds of things? These were conversations inside our firm for our fund, just for capital deployment purposes. And we wanted to treat it as sort of as a platform investment, so we could grow into that over a period of years and really build a nice book of business inside the portfolio around fintech and DeFi and things like that. So it wasn't necessarily about cryptocurrencies at the time, or what actually wasn't anything about cryptocurrencies, but it was about blockchain. So so we own now Blockchain Data Corporation inside our portfolio. And we started building on some of these food trusts and things like that. We got involved in that, and then we started actually deploying those technologies inside some of our portfolio companies that we invest in. We invest in brands companies. We have two different sides of the house: public enterprise fund and private companies fund. So we try to pollinate value across them as much as we can. And Josh, we started getting into this fintech, and we started to realize, wow, there are huge gaps in this space. It's like, okay, so you can have a mobile wallet where you put your cash, but that didn't really excite me, because I could already do that with my app from the bank on my phone, and I had PayPal on my phone, and I had all these things already on my phone. So I couldn't figure out, well, where's the value? Why would somebody want to do this? There's already all this stuff you can do.
Right.
But of course, that's never the way to look at if you want to create the future. You can't look at the now and say, okay, that's good enough. You have to look at the now and say, this is awful. I'm sure there's a kid out there somewhere, Josh, it's 15 years old, sitting in his bedroom at night after school, looking at his brand spanking new iPhone 13 and saying, this is terrible. I can do better than this.
Hopefully it's my son.
that'll be the kid that changes the world, right? Because he's not happy, not satisfied with whatever it is today. So we look at things a lot that way. So we found these gaps. We thought, wow, this stuff they're calling fintech really doesn't. If you really apply it now to the consumer, go out in the marketplace and see how Josh Peak can use this and really feel like he got value from it. That didn't exist. It just didn't exist. I mean, you have PayPal. So what? I mean, that was great when it was new and when it was innovative. And we also saw a whole bunch of companies stuck in disruption. So we saw innovation happening, and you saw it all over the press about fintech and DeFi and all that crypto and everything, right? And then I'm talking about 2015, 16 timeframe, 17 timeframe. Then you saw what was happening. That was going to be those were going to be the waves, right, to ride for the future. Then you saw, on top of that, coming in at the same time, all this conversation about disruption.
Yeah.
Because Uber is a good example of innovation and disruption.
Yep.
And people were kind of stuck on that. Uber innovated to disrupt the taxi business and create the rideshare space.
Right.
All right. So that was innovative and it was disruptive. But we started thinking about that. Well, is it really? I mean, does it really matter these days to be disruptive? So if you get on any quarterly conference call for any corporation these days, they always the CEO, when he's talking, or maybe the COO, whoever's on the call, usually not the CFO when he's talking about the numbers, but they always talk about disruption. just like they used to always talk about innovation.
Yep.
Well, we think both innovation and disruption are a little passé. Like that should just automatically be baked in today. We think the next level of that is transformation. And we think that's what Uber really did. What Uber really did is it innovated, it upwardly disrupted for the purpose of transforming how people think about something as simple as taking a ride.
Yeah.
Very simple thing, billions of dollars shifted. So now you have all these people out there with these mobile phones, and you have all this opportunity out there with technology around fintech and decentralized finance and opportunities in cryptocurrencies and so on, and all kinds of digital assets being built out and developed, and NFTs and fungible baskets, all these different things. Wow, so we really need to think about that. So what we did was we started to build on a process of acquiring and investing in technologies related to fintech. And then we ended up with a platform that was initially just a basic payments platform where you have a mobile wallet and you could have a Visa debit card associated with it. And then that evolved into the next generation. And now we're 30 some months into this process. Not quite 3 years, but I guess about 3 years. And all of a sudden, we wake up and now I have this wonderful fintech solution called OG Pay. It's at ogpay.com. Someone can very easily onboard there in a matter of like 30 seconds, have their account open. It has a KYC, AML, and in the crypto, it has a KYT, that's know your transaction layer to it, that all happens in the background. So it's seamless for the user, where someone can load money onto the platform. They can instantly load when they sign up from their checking account by using their debit card. So they get an instant load money onto the platform. They can start earning reward bucks. It's equivalent to 2% of whatever monies they have in their wallet, APY. And then they can start using it. So they can do things like every single day. We have things around here called our OG Pay Day. And what's our OG Pay Day look like? For me, I use it. My family uses it, and everybody in this firm of ours uses it because it's a great way to be able to reinvent, sort of use your money in a new way. It's a great way to reimagine. And we believe that we're transforming, like Uber transformed something as simple as how to take a ride. OG Pay is transforming for people how to use their money. And then with cryptocurrencies, just the ability to be able to instantly settle a crypto transaction, and also be responsible about settling the crypto transaction. If you have $1,000 in crypto profits on OG Pay in Bitcoin, and you want to go buy your wife something nice with the profits, well, in OG Pay, you can absolutely sell it instantly, a portion of that money, of that crypto, that profit. You can sell it instantly, and you can settle it into a mobile wallet, into cash instantly, or you can settle it onto a virtual or a physical debit card instantly. And then you can just go buy your wife the new pair of shoes or
That's
whatever,
awesome.
right? So it's instant, but it also has to be done responsibly, because as soon as you do that and you take profits, then you could very well have a short-term or long-term capital gains liability that you have to pay. So if you're going to take $1,000 out, you might have, you might only actually get the value of 700 of it, because you might have to give, 300 of it to Caesar. Give unto Caesar what's Caesar's, right?
That's right. Yep.
So OG Pay lets people know that, hey, the pop-up comes up and says, hey, you're selling profit. You may have get with your tax advisor. You may have to pay taxes on taking these profits. Things like that are really important. So we've tried to be thoughtfully considerate of all the regulatory environments and all that. We operate in the United States. That's the other thing. We're not trying to go offshore to some crazy place so we can do crazy things in the crypto space. That's not the point of it either. So we have all of our liquidity is maintained across a pool of liquidity partnerships. And our crypto business operates in the OTC markets. It does not operate. We don't have relationships with like Coinbase or these others. So we don't We don't pull our liquidity from fragmented retail-based liquidity. We have primary and agency level desk OTC contracts that we use to get our liquidity. So that's how we can put liquidity on deck to be able to settle instantly these crypto transactions. So we have some technology behind that, some patents. Original Digital Corporation has some patents filed on these particular technologies and these ways of doing things related to liquidity and so forth. So we're very enthusiastic about OG Pay. It operates in multiple countries, multiple languages. It has instant conversion on the FX without any foreign exchange fees. So you can convert the whole platform to Euro or the whole platform to Nara or Rand if you're in South Africa. I mean, whatever. And it's getting better and better. I mean, I think the latest version added all the QR code technology to it, so you can just scan QR codes. And the other cool thing about OG Pay that I really like about it, frankly, doesn't have anything to do with the individual mobile wallet. I mean, that's exciting if somebody just got it, right? It's because it's cool. But for me, at the business level, OG Pay just launched its beta 3 or 4 months ago, 5 months ago, of its OG Pay merchant services. Nice. And I'm extremely enthusiastic about that, because when I go to my dry cleaner or something and I scan, I just pay OG Pay with my OG Pay wallet, and my bill's $100. And that merchant, my dry cleaner, has an OG Pay merchant wallet, and I could just pay him for those services wallet to wallet.
Nice. Yeah.
And then he doesn't have to pay 3% of merchant fees, because it's not going through the rails. It's not going through a merchant gateway. It doesn't have to worry about mids and balancing and all of that. It was $100. I just sent him $100 from my wallet to his merchant wallet, and I saved him $3.
Yeah.
I mean, so from an efficiency point of view, that's sort of the DeFi model that matters, I call it, because that's where you can really show where someone can save money, and a business, a merchant, a small and medium-sized business can save money through OG Pay's merchant services offering. So
do you think this is going to disrupt in the merchant services then? I mean, as far as
I think it has the opportunity to. I mean, there are companies. You could go to crypto.com, you could go to these different places, and they'll give you a card, and you could just swipe the Visa card, and then you're doing that with your crypto. But people do that mindlessly without understanding what are the fees associated with that. How much of my crypto did I have to actually just give up to do that on this Visa card, right? And where's that card issued? Where's the card from? Is another thing. And then the other pieces, what I really like about those folks at ODC and how they did OG Pay, I really like how they did the security layer, because the cards are delinked from the mobile wallet, from the cash. So you can keep, I keep like $5 in my OG Pay virtual Visa card, and maybe 40 cents in my physical card. So if I ever lost my wallet or my physical card, nobody can steal money. But if I lost my wallet and my physical card for my debit card from my bank account is there, and I have all my money there, somebody can just swipe and push credit, and they can take my money, and it's extremely inconvenient. Now, granted, the bank and Visa, they're all going to fix it. You're going to get your money back. You're not going to lose the money that somebody used when they took your stuff.
Yeah.
But you're going to be inconvenienced and out the money until they fix it. So with this model, where they have 40 cents and then the card's no good to them, and as soon as I lose it, I can shut it off in OG Pay. I can just turn the cards on and off based on, I lost my wallet and my card, I have to turn it off, suspend it. It's that instantly. Now, the cool thing about that is, when I want to use the Visa, though, when I want to use it, I just instantly say, hey, move $200 to the Visa. I'm buying people lunch.
Nice.
And it does, and then I'm done.
Yep.
Right? So I don't have to, and which is why I believe OG Pay, yes, I think it's going to be disruptive. And yes, I believe it's going to be disruptive in OG Pay merchant services. But I also believe it's going to be transformative, like Uber was in transportation. I think it's going to transform how merchants think about how they take payments.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to, which is a simple thing, but so is taking a ride is a simple thing.
Right.
And I think it's going to transform how people, individuals, consumers, me, you and me, think about how we use our money every day.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things I was always talking to Daryl, other people I knew in the space. I was like, wow, I mean, okay, it's great that we have this crypto and we have whatever, but how do we use it? Like, I mean, how are you ever going to be able to use a card or I mean, how are you going to use it like money, whatever? And then he's like, well, you got to see OG Pay, what they're doing. It's brilliant. I mean, that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I've been looking for people. I've talked to a lot of people who wanted to talk about NFTs, crypto, whatever else. But after talking to Daryl and some people, I wanted to have you on. This has been some of the best. I mean, as far as explaining it goes, I've learned a lot just during this call. So a lot of these were my questions. Like, okay, I mean, maybe in a greedy way, like I want to know this, I want to understand this information, but I understand. I know that without a doubt, my audience gained a lot from this, and obviously there's a learning curve and there's more education that we have. This was probably just scratching the surface. I'm sure. I'm sure you can go deeper and whatever else, but I like to learn at the basic levels and build off of that, which I think is what we've accomplished here. So, and I know you got to get ready to run here, but so I appreciate you coming on. So give us the websites real quick, the OG Pay and the OG 2D as well.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. It is a learning curve. I'm still on it myself.
Yep.
I mean, I would, if you ask me many more questions, I'm going to have to hit the bat phone and ask somebody. The OG Pay is ogpay.com.
Okay.
And if you go, if someone wanted to download the app on their phone, the App Store or the Google Play Store, they would just go to that store and they would just type OG Pay, OGPAY, and they'll find the wallets there. They can put them on their phones. It's good to have an account first set up. So ogpay.com on your phone or on your computer or whatever, set up your account, get yourself established, and then just use that same username and password when you open up the app. Yeah. It's a lot easier that way. And then original OG2D, original to digital, OG2D.com for the NFT marketplace is where they'll find all the NFTs and the offerings that are there.
Well, again, I appreciate you coming on, Paul, and I know you're busy and you got a lot of things going on. And so again, Paul Caldwell, Caldwell Soames CEO. And again, I really appreciate you coming on and educating my crew here and following of this as well. So you guys have a good rest of the day, though.
All right. Appreciate you, Josh. Take care.
Thanks, Paul.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Yep.